We are back with Autumn Miles following what happened after she found God in the middle of an abusive marriage. So you're changing, but your situation has not changed. So what happens next?
So that night, I fell down on my face before the Lord and completely dedicated my life to Christ. I lived in that marriage for a year. Because I didn't know who God was. I think a lot of times, even growing up with my dad, a pastor, it was assumed I had a relationship with the Lord, but I didn't. I had to humble myself and say, listen, I gotta start at the basics. What is faith? How do I actually trust something I can't see? And so I started asking crazy questions like, God, if you're real, make a man with a blue shirt come in the gas station. And things like that would start happening. It was so simple.
The man in the blue shirt's like, I don't know why I have to get gas and my tank's full.
And I would look at him and be like, hello, I'm so glad to see you. But I had to build my faith from level 0. Sometimes we have to humble ourselves to realize, listen, we talk a good game, but do we actually have the faith to back up what we say? And that led me to one day where I felt like God released me from that marriage. I was terrified of divorce, grew up in a background that, you said legalistic earlier, was really drawn to the rules of religion is what legalism means. And I felt God say, listen, it's okay. You're released. I had separated from him for 4 times. I had gone to counseling. Things just got worse. I was terrified. Like I said before, he was going to kill me. And so I told my church because I thought, my dad's the pastor. I'm going to find help here. I told my church. And they did the opposite of that. They looked at the divorce and they actually brought me before the church to kick me out rather than handling the abuse of my ex-husband. So
that's the part that breaks my heart the most, because church should be a safe place for us when we're broken. It should be a hospital, but it's not always.
Not always. There are some amazing churches out there, but we need to understand that we live in a day and age where, man runs the church. He always has. God is the spirit of the church and is the bride of Christ. But sometimes man makes mistakes. We have to live forgiving the men and women when they make bad leadership decisions like they made in my case.
So you're on this new journey. You obviously feel now more shame and guilt. How do you get past that? How do you overcome that feeling of like, I am the one person who can never really totally be forgiven or redeemed?
I felt that for a long time. I felt like my sin was so great. Everything bad I had done was so great. How could God forgive me? And when I dedicated my life to Christ, based on his death for me and the resurrection of his son, I started thinking about that, and I thought, you know what? Jesus couldn't have meant me. He couldn't have meant me when he said, I've forgiven all sin. And one lady came up to me one time and she looked at me and I said, I'm really struggling with the shame, with this guilt, what I did to my family, what I did to my community. And she said, don't be so prideful to think that Jesus's blood wasn't enough for you. And I looked at her and I knew that the Spirit of God spoke directly through her. That was pride. I was thinking my sin was greater than his death on the cross. And it was that minute that the shame started to drop away.
You write about your story in this book, I Am Rahab, and you talk about how you didn't relate to some of the heroes of the Bible until you met this woman, Rahab. Who is she?
So Rahab is a hero in Jericho. When the Israelites, God's chosen people, were going to go into the promised land, there was one city that they had to conquer first. It was called Jericho before they could take up residence in the promised land. And they needed someone on the inside to help them with intelligence on how they could defeat Jericho. And she was a harlot. And we find 2 spies in the story going into her house. And Rahab the harlot helps these 2 spies, which ends up helping them defeat the first city in the promised land.
And ends up saving her whole family. And then she ends up in the bloodline of Jesus, way back in his ancestors, which is just a picture of how God sees us, all of us, when we turn to him, no matter what we've done. Talk to me about that one person who's watching right now who says, you know what, you don't know what I've done though, Autumn. can God forgive anyone for anything?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that God would not forgive me. And when I found Rahab the harlot, I thought, you know what? If God could forgive Rahab the harlot and use her, then God can forgive anything that I've done. We're never too far gone. That's what Satan wants us to think. That's what evil wants us to think. We're too far gone. We've done too much. Our past is too stained. What you did last night, God can't forgive. And that is a lie. We have to replace those lies with the truth of God's word. And man, it sets us free. It sets us free in ways that we can't even comprehend. But that's the beauty of the cross.
So you know that's the truth, but how do you live it? Like, how did you really do it so that now you feel like, yeah, that's washed away, it's gone?
It's got, well, through my salvation was the first step to that. But as far as peeling back the lies and the layers, I became obsessed with the Bible. I wanted to know what was a truth to replace a lie that I had been living, that I had been believing. So for every lie that I had believed, you're not enough, you're stupid, you weren't born on purpose, I found a truth to go with that lie, to contradict the lie. And that's what we have to do. We have to replace. We have to start, like I said earlier, from ground zero. We have to start building our minds based on the truth of God's word, not the lies of the enemy.
That's so good. So it is a process, step by
Yes.
step. Thank you so much for coming to share your story. There's so much more we could talk about, but we are out of time.
Yes. Thank you for having me. What an honor. Really appreciate it.
Great. Well, listen, if that is you, if you are that person who's saying, you know what, you don't know what I've done, I can't be forgiven, or maybe I know this is true, but I can't quite seem to get it through my head, there's great advice for you from Autumn. Also, we'd love to pray with you. That number is on your screen, 1-866-273-4444. Sometimes you just can't do it by yourself. You need someone to walk that journey with you, so give us a call. We'd love to do that. We'll be right back.